shock rocker Marilyn Manson was one of the most controversial figures in music for years, as reported by The Washington Post in 1997. Police, government officials and concerned parents attempted to shut down his concerts due to fears that he was corrupting the youth, worshipping Satan and inciting violence. In spite of these allegations, fans related to the anger, irreverence and disenchantment in Manson's music, as described by Salon. For some outcast teens, Marilyn Manson became a refuge from a family and community they felt rejected by. In the wake of allegations of extreme psychological, sexual and physical abuse, Manson's legacy is being reevaluated. While Manson was a highly successful musician earning Grammy nominations, appearing on magazine covers and topping the charts, the moralistic backlash against him led some to see him as rebellious and misunderstood, persecuted because of his dark imagery and edgy persona. In 2018, actress Rachel Wood testified about sexual assault and domestic abuse from her ex-boyfriend Marilyn Manson. Since then, as detailed by Rolling Stone, more stories of Manson subjecting others to violent abuse have come out. Former devoted fans have had to grapple with the truth about who their icon really was and the violent personality he never really tried to hide. Marilyn Manson's legacy has changed. In the wake of the accusations against Marilyn Manson, longtime fans have had to reconcile their feelings about Manson and his music with the stories of extreme psychological, physical and sexual abuse told by his former partners. Many of Manson's earlier statements have been re-evaluated since the accusations, and stories that were initially dismissed as typical rock star bravado have been reassessed as a part of a pattern of cruelty and violence. As described by an investigative report from Rolling Stone, Manson's early stage act included hitting a woman in a cage. In his autobiography, Manson joked that he might have caused brain damage with his onstage beatings, and briefly considered murdering her with a bandmate. In an interview in 1995, he stated that he was attracted to women who were terrified of him. After Rachel Wood split up with him the first time, Manson told Spin that he had attempted to get her back by calling her 158 times in a row while self-harming with the intention of making her feel guilty. He also stated that he had fantasies every day about smashing her skull in with a sledgehammer. There were many more stories of horrendous abuse. Since Rachel Wood's testimony, more than a dozen women have come forward with their own stories of Marilyn Manson's abuse. The accusations include accounts of Manson subjecting his partners to violent physical abuse, including cutting them with knives, electrocuting them and once chasing his partner with an axe. As described in an exposé from Rolling Stone, there have been many similar stories of extreme psychological abuse. The most bizarre of these involves a soundproof former recording booth made of glass, that some have stated Manson turned into a cell that he forced his partners into for hours at a time as a form of punishment, keeping the environment freezing cold, keeping food from them and preventing them from sleeping. The cell was described more than 5 years before Wood's testimony, in a 2011 interview with Manson himself, in which it was called the Bad Girls Room. Several of Manson's accusers, including model Ashley Morgan Smithline and actress Esme Bianco, filed lawsuits against him with charges including human trafficking and unlawful imprisonment. Manson stopped being relevant. While Columbine damaged Marilyn Manson's career, trying to challenge mainstream pop culture while also positioning himself firmly inside it may have ultimately done more damage. In 2017, MTV reported on an apparent celebrity beef between Marilyn Manson and pop star Justin Bieber. Manson claimed that Bieber claimed he was making the shock rocker relevant again by selling his old merch. Whether or not the Bieber t-shirt drama was real, it was emblematic of a larger issue in Manson's career. He wasn't really shocking anymore. An article by Westward in 2018 described Manson as no longer scary, and theorized it was because American society had caught up with him. The news was more shocking than his act. Manson continued to release albums full of violent imagery, but over time the majority of his media coverage shifted from outrage and backlash to reporting on celebrity drama, his romantic relationships, amusingly awkward appearances on TV, and in 2017 an injury. As described by The Guardian, Manson, who was 48 at the time, accidentally pulled a large stage prop onto himself during a show, causing him to be carried off stage in a stretcher. Later he would have to perform several live shows in a wheelchair. Some fans complained that the quality of Marilyn Manson's concerts was going down. The Westward article, which questioned Manson's ability to shock a modern audience, also remarked that his live vocal performance wasn't particularly strong and described him as a little sad. Marilyn Manson was a self-destructive star. Whether or not Marilyn Manson's paradoxical position in American pop culture was a good fit for the kind of music he wanted to make, it made him a celebrity. But while his career was flourishing, Manson himself was spiraling. In his autobiography, Manson described how his behavior had begun to push away his creative collaborators, costing him opportunities and stalling the production of his album. To cope, he engaged in self-harm and risky drug use. In an interview with Kerrang, he recounted how he had used stimulants to experiment with sleep deprivation. In an interview with Rolling Stone, Manson stated that there had been a pervasive rumor that he was going to die by suicide on Halloween, and that he began to feel like he would have to go through with it. However, a bomb threat on his Halloween concert prevented the situation. The majority of Manson's public exploits and statements to the media were dismissed as rock star behavior, or an extension of his extreme antisocial persona. Manson anger appealed to alienated youth. Marilyn Manson's music depicts a specific kind of anger, alienation, and apathetic nihilism that is cathartic for many of its listeners. His act was intentionally subversive, irreverent, and blasphemous, and vitally important to adolescents who felt like outcasts. Occasionally this caused a kind of moral panic. As described by Salon, religious leaders, concerned parents, and school districts feared that listening to Manson's violent lyrics put children at risk. Some attempted to draw links between the violent imagery in Manson's lyrics and real acts of violence by possible fans. According to sociologist and author of Teenage Wasteland Suburbia's Dead-End Kids Donna Gaines, this narrative fails to consider that teenagers who were alienated by their community were drawn to the music of Marilyn Manson and other controversial artists, but their problems were not caused by them. Instead, Gaines argued that Manson's music probably saved more kids' lives than any parent would like to admit. Manson has spoken extensively about his own difficult childhood in suburban Ohio. In interviews with Rolling Stone, Manson stated that his father had a violent temper, his mother was abusive, and at school he was forced to sit through Christian lectures condemning heavy metal music for containing secret satanic messages, sparking his first interest in becoming a rock star. As stated in an interview with Kerrang, his religious school's frequent discussion of the end of the world and the coming of the Antichrist left him with devastating nightmares.